Hello, and welcome to PhDear Diary. My name is Andy Salkeld, and this is a video blog, video diary, whatever you want to call it, of my time undertaking a PhD. So this is something new that I wanted to do. I've enjoyed blogging, vlogging, keeping records of stuff over the years, and it felt appropriate to kind of get back into this now, particularly when I'm doing something so kind of big and, to me at least, important. So I just wanted to kind of start recording things about me, what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what I'm working through, because having lived with two different people that have done two different PhDs, they put a stress on a person, and it's hard, it's tough, and this is a way of keeping a check with myself, but also it allows me to keep a reflexive diary that I can look back on and see how the process of doing a PhD and doing the work involved with it has kind of shaped me, but also shaped the work itself. I'm doing a PhD in psychology. And one of the important parts of that, particularly in a qualitative setting, is about reflexivity. And that's how me as a researcher, my experiences, my beliefs, everything that I bring influences what I see within data or within the studies and so on. And it's important to kind of see how that changes, and also to be able to look back and say, okay, well, here's what I found, here's how I changed, and here's how that influenced things that came out of it. So that's kind of a long introduction to what I'm doing. There will probably be more of these that I'll do as kind of background, stuff like that, just so that people can understand it more. Because obviously for a lot of people, PhDs and all of that can kind of be this almost ethereal thing, not really understanding how they're done, what they mean, what they entail, etc. And I kind of want to demystify that a bit as well, because they are accessible, you can do them and so on. And I just wanted to be able to share what I'm going through, probably on a weekly basis. I think weekly is probably reasonable. I tried doing stuff like this daily before, and it becomes a slog. Whereas at least weekly I can keep a track of it. If not much has happened, it's just a short one to check in, and vice versa. So that's kind of a background to what this is. So what am I actually going to be doing my PhD in? Well, during the COVID-19 pandemic, I decided I would start learning psychology, because I've done a lot of work in the mental health space, particularly within business, and I wanted to develop that and actually understand it from a psychological perspective, what it means for us as people. So I did a master's conversion in psychology, which was great. I did a research piece into mental illness stigma within professional services. I'm an accountant by background and training, so it felt appropriate to kind of build upon what I knew. And then I really enjoyed it, and I decided that I was going to do a PhD and try to expand on this. And there's kind of a lot of thoughts that went into this, and at this stage, today is kind of week one, day two, I guess. Induction is tomorrow and the day after, but I wanted to share with you right now what my initial thoughts were going into this, and kind of what my field of research will be and how I want to develop it. So there's a lot of background I did around kind of mental health within business and or organisations. I need to get into the habit of using the right terms. But really, the thing I care about is kind of we as people work within organisations. And there's kind of this weird membrane that doesn't really exist, but we interface with each other. And that's the bit I'm really interested in. And when it comes to mental health or mental illness, however you want to kind of describe it, from which angle, a lot of research and a lot of studies and a lot of work focuses on the individual and the individual differences that lead into kind of mental illness. This person struggles with this, therefore that person can search for the tools to support them. However, not a huge amount is done looking at the actual, how the organizations shape it. Because, and this is my kind of view going in, different shapes of organizations come with different stress in different parts of the business. And therefore, how those interplay with an individual will be different. So I always just like the way I find easiest to explain this is with examples. So a small business where you are constantly trying to fight to win work, sales is by far the most important side of the business, because if you don't sell, you don't make money, and you don't kind of survive from a business perspective. Therefore, there is a lot more pressure on the people in sales to deliver and to succeed. Similarly, in finance, where money is king, there's a lot of pressure there. As you move up, as a business grows, sales kind of takes on, it becomes standardized. You are always selling, you are always doing this, and a lot of the emphasis within businesses switches to have finance said yes, have finance approved it, and so on. And that's about maintaining the status quo. And these both put people in different kind of states of stress, different distances from the location of power within the organization, and various things like that. There's different demand control like that. I have a screen here with all my kind of notes that I presented on, but I'm just kind of giving an oversight into how different teams within different businesses, different shapes, have different impacts. Now, similarly, different businesses have different cultures, and how a person, an individual, fits within that culture will impact on their well-being. Because if they don't fit, they may not feel accepted, they may not feel supported, and therefore they may struggle. Similarly, cultures may support concepts such as incivility. I hadn't heard of this before I started my master's degree, but incivility, as I understand it, is kind of like microaggressions in a way. So things where they're not directly targeted, but they do exist. And one of the things that I'm interested in is, does seeing someone in a senior position, someone who holds more power or more authority, does seeing them commit an act of incivility towards a person with mental illness or someone struggling in some way, shape, or form, does that perpetuate other kind of ongoing beliefs or encourage others to also act in an incivil way towards them? Because this could represent one of the ways that stigma is maintained within an organization. So that's kind of the close to the individual level. And then I want to look up above that, and this is where you kind of get into what I'm referring to now as organizational level attributes, or kind of leadership level stuff. And this is where, how do the things people who work for a business, who have very little control over, how does that, or more esoteric, how do these impact? So these are things like where I say management structure, so, or ownership structure. So does having a sole owner, director, manager, so in an owner managed business with employees, how does that environment and that culture impact an individual differently to, say, a PLC, where one could be very tall, typically PLC, one could be very flat, where it's a single person with lots of people reporting to them. Do those impact people differently? You then look at kind of other ownership structures. So PLCs are listed, and that could impact upon people differently than, say, a publicly funded, government-funded organisation, which could be different to a limited company that's just owned by shareholders, which could be different to, say, private equity-backed businesses, which, again, I think would be very interesting, because in the kind of hearsay or conversation, the culture within private equity-backed businesses is very different to the culture within PLCs, because private equity is about growth, and it's about the next sale, the next deal. Just whilst we're at it, because she's just wandered by, you will also notice that I have my little black cat Pika. She is involved, she's around, she is somewhere. She will appear from time to time, but feel free to keep an eye out. But yeah, so how do these different things how do these different organizational attributes impact them? So that's kind of legal structure, funding structure. It could also be interesting to look at something like revenue generation, because and again, I haven't seen direct research into this, but it's something I care about, and have posited thoughts on, is how do organizations where you have to win work, where a person has to go out and convince a sale, how does that differ to an organization where everything is subscription driven and there is recurring revenue ongoing with very little kind of work to be done? Because in my mind, when you have to win work, there is always a fear of loss or exposure in case it doesn't happen, and therefore that kind of breeds anxiety within an organization, or at least within the leadership, and how does that pass down to the individuals within it? And again, this is something that can be explored through kind of various studies and so on, and these are just some of the areas I want to look at. And kind of above all this, one of the things I'm interested in is, can I develop an industrial culture framework? So, and what I mean by this is, there's been work done to look at national cultures. So different nations, different countries have various national cultures. Some are more masculine, feminine, some are more autocratic, etc., etc. So Hofstede has done a lot of work on this, and he's looked at things like power distance, individualism, masculinity, certainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence, and has looked at how organizational culture is influenced by national culture. So say you are in a masculine national culture, does that lead to a masculine organizational culture? And what I'm interested in is, does industrial culture, so differentiating organizations based on their industry, exist? So does someone working in retail, does retail have its own individual culture that is influenced by national and organizational level? So kind of sits in between. And how does that differ from, say, professional services, from hospitality? And the reason I care about all this, and the reason I want to research this and am looking into it through a PhD, very much because almost every organization I've seen, worked with, and spoken to, they're all putting in mental health first aiders. They have all the resources available on the internet that you can access at any one time. Things like that. It's not bespoke, it's not tailored, and not only is it not tailored to the individual, but it's not tailored to the organization. And what I feel is we can do better by our people. We can do better by our staff and the people that work for us and the people that that need it. And if we can look at an organisation, look at its culture, and use all these different attributes, these things that are static, that very, very rarely change, and use that to predict where people are going to be struggling the most. So if we can say for certain, if we can say, not for certainty, that's never correct, but with science behind us, and we can say, well, you know what, people in this organisation with this culture, with this ownership structure, with this leadership style, the people in finance are going to be the ones who are struggling most because of X, Y, and Z. Therefore, this is where we can put in the correct solution to support those people. And that way we can deliver better, and we can support people where they need it. And I approach all of this from a commercial standpoint. I am an accountant by background, and I don't want businesses spending money where it's not needed, because no business wants to spend money where it's not needed. But this allows us to say, well, actually, this is where the money should be spent and will deliver the best impact for the amount spent. And that's the theme of it. That's where I am in kind of week one. I presented this to an interview panel, and they were very supportive. They enjoyed it. And there's a lot of work. It's not refined yet. The refinement will come as I actually dive into the literature. And because I need to get up to speed very quickly with all this. But this very much is where it is right now. Now, I'm approaching this very much from a quantitative point of view. So what that means is I want to kind of do it by the numbers. I want to ask questions to people and have numerical surveys so I can look at statistics and averages, expected value, all that stuff, to kind of say, well, actually, here is a significant difference that is very unlikely to be due to random occurrence, and then we can make data-driven decisions based on that. And that's something I always care about, is data-driven decisions. So that's my main point of view, but I do want to do some qualitative. I'm a firm believer in learning throughout, so I want to make sure that I challenge myself as well. I don't want to just sit behind a computer, write surveys and be done with it. That I want to actually see people, particularly from understanding mental health. Mental health is individualized. People are different, and their experiences will be different, and that experience is important to understand and include within research like this to ensure that everything reflects what is, not just what is seen through kind of sampling and data. So that very much is a whistle-stop tour, an introduction to what I'm wanting to do. As for the checking in with myself right now, I haven't started fully, but this is had various course things going. I have my induction on Thursday and Friday this week. I have my kickoff meeting with my supervisor next Tuesday, and it should be good. I'm nervous. I really struggle with kind of long-term kind of, I'm going to be doing this for 4 years. That is a lot. I get bored of things, and I said this in my interview, like, I get bored. So the way I have to do this is I have to structure it piecemeal. I have to say, I'm doing one study now, I'm doing another study now, then another study, and then slowly feed it all together and synthesize from that, rather than just doing one big piece of work. That's something I've learned over the years, and it's something that I build upon now. So I am nervous. I kind of just want to get started. I just want to sit down and get involved, but at the same point, I know I have to do I have to follow the process. I'm impatient after all. Other than that, I am doing well. I'm healthy. Usual stuff, and it should be good. I'm excited for this, and I'm kind of glad to just be back recording things like this. As you can see, I've done various overlays and stuff like that to kind of keep it consistent, looking nice. But generally speaking, this isn't necessarily for anyone other than myself. But if I can share what I do and I can kind of put it out there and help other people understand what a PhD is, understand why organisational psychology matters, and learn something, that's great. I might do, every so often I might do kind of paper reviews. So where someone has published a scientific paper, I might actually review that and put it out into public, just as a way to kind of say, here's the stuff I am looking at and here's why it's important. One of the things I'm a firm believer in is that the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so this is my way of teaching, even when I'm not necessarily involved in actual seminars, lectures, and so on at university. But that's where I am right now, as at the 2nd of February. It's a long journey ahead of me, but I'm looking forward to getting started. And I look forward to sharing it with you all in the future. So thank you very much for listening, tuning in, and I will post another one next week. Thank you.